Started then. I'll kind
Yeah.
of even get rid of our little opening screen right here. Oh, it does look like we've got Jennifer's on here. So we do have a couple
Hmm.
of us. So let's
Hmm.
go ahead and we'll get ourselves going.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
Bird, would you like to kick us off with a
Yeah.
little intro?
So my name is Byrd. I'm not sure if Melissa and Jennifer, if you guys were here at our last chat, but I'm a registered dietitian and I help midlife women navigate the craziness that is perimenopause, using, diet and lifestyle strategies to and when they want to lose weight, improve their energy, get better sleep, and that kind of thing. So welcome. Happy everybody's here.
Yes, yeah, glad to have you. I'm Nicole. I'm a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach, and I am super passionate about helping women over 40 rebuild their strength, rebuild their energy, and just be able to feel more confident in their bodies. And I do that through strength training, whole foods nutrition concepts, and even working on better sleep practices because I believe that is the foundation to that better energy and to just feeling like yourself overall. So I love to bring everything together, kind of a whole body approach, sleep, stress, fitness, and food to help you feel stronger and more confident in your body.
Mhm. Fantastic. And so,
And
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so today, we recently started this series of Midlife Simplified because we know that there's just so much information floating around everywhere. We can't avoid it. It's on the news. It's in our social media feeds. We're probably getting a million newsletters a day telling us how we should be managing our health in perimenopause, menopause, after 40. So we both believe from a scientific, research backed kind of background here that it really can be simplified. We don't need all that noise. So we're here to break things down. And especially today, we're going to start tackling a lot of the myths, a lot of the trends that are coming at us that are either giving us mixed messages. There's more to it than what we're hearing, or they're really just not helpful at all.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And so, I mean, we sort of determined the kinds of myths and misinformation, I guess, that are in trends that we saw the most out in the world. I mean, when we say that, it's really social media, I think, don't you think, Nicole? Where all these
I think a
things
lot of
going.
us spend a lot of time there
Yeah.
too, more than some of maybe those other sources. So yeah, it's coming at us
Hmm.
a
And
lot
so
there.
one of the biggest things that we have seen being brought up is that, and certainly recently, is that um, hormones, the sense that hormones are like the only reason that you can't lose weight, or the reason that you've discovered you've got this sort of stubborn belly fat in your middle now. And so we just wanted to sort of address that, because, well, it's true that hormones matter a lot. They're not the only factor, and they don't make weight loss impossible. And so really what they do is they just sort of declining estrogen and progesterone just change the rules a little bit, but it doesn't mean that there aren't things you can do if you're trying to lose, specifically, usually that's where women start to accumulate belly fat is in their midsection, right? So I mean, estrogen, when it influences appetite regulation and insulin sensitivity and fat storage patterns and muscle mass and that kind of thing. So but there are other things going on that are, so that's why it's important. It's related to the other things, but it doesn't mean that those other things like losing muscle and disrupted sleep and typically increased stress around this age. You can't do things to address those on their own. So I think that, and other things that are actually going on that people might not realize are going on. They'll come and see, I haven't changed anything. I don't understand what's going on. I'm just putting weight on in my middle. Nothing has changed. I think that sometimes things do change that we might not realize because they've been changing slowly. Like often we're moving less without really realizing it. We're losing muscle mass, maybe burning slightly fewer calories due to less muscle and less of that spontaneous, like non-exercise activity movement. Appetite signals are changing, so you might be eating a little bit differently without knowing it. So I think that, like I said, hormones may explain why weight loss feels harder than it used to, but it doesn't mean that you're doomed. And the goal isn't to fight your hormones, it's to understand the new rules and sort of work with them. And it also means that hormone, like if you are thinking of hormone replacement therapy for the purposes of the belly fat specifically, you might not find a lot of success treating that symptom, I guess. Certainly the vasomotor symptoms, it can be very helpful with that, um, but there are other things you can do, right? Including, I think the biggest thing from my perspective is building muscle. And I don't know, I think Nicole agrees with me. Would you say, Nicole? Yeah.
Definitely. And I think one of the messages that's kind of left out of this conversation out there is the fact of how kind of these what Bird and I like to talk about is kind of these foundational or these basics that we should be mastering, which is a strength training to build muscle, but eating a whole foods diet, especially fiber, managing stress so that we can get a good night's sleep. All of
Mhm.
those work together. Those actually influence our hormones and how we're processing them. So the hormone metabolism in our body. So those are much needed habits in our daily life in order to help kind of, again, hormone metabolism, but that would ease some of the symptoms maybe we're experiencing.
Mhm.
And definitely, especially as far as kind of that mysterious weight gain as it goes, straight, yeah, building more muscle can definitely help. Again, body recomposition was what we like to call it. Let's build more
Yeah.
muscle so that our body is more active, even if we're sitting. Our body itself, muscles burning more. It's a more active tissue.
Mhm.
Let's reduce some of the fat mass in our body and increase the muscle mass. And I think we're going to notice an overall, just kind of not only are we going to have more energy, but we're going to notice that decrease in the belly fat in those specific areas that we tend to be really bothered by. So it's those baseline habits. And just to insert real quick, I think right at the beginning you said it, Bert, and it's something to look for whenever you're trying to decipher a message that you're seeing is she said only, there is sometimes hormones are the only reason
Right.
that you're holding on weight, you're not losing weight, or if something is always, you should always do this or you
Right.
should never do it. So that kind of extreme language, whenever somebody is using that, that's kind of a red flag that it's a myth, or there's more to it than that. There's more context around it.
Mhm.
So definitely I would say don't fall into that trap of the only, the always, the never. Do your research if you're really interested in what that person is saying to see if it even qualifies as a valid um,
Yeah.
as a valid method to help manage or reduce symptoms, or talk to one of us, or
Yeah.
anybody that's a doctor that's a reputable source that may be able to help.
Yeah, yeah. And yep, I second that. And just, to keep in mind that, Nicole and I were talking before, this is everything influences everything else. So it's nuanced. It's not like, hormones are the only reason, or, the next thing we're going to talk about was carbs. Carbs have got to have got to go. Carbs are bad, right? I think that that's certainly something that I could find when I'm meeting with my patients. It's, almost a phobia of carbs sometimes. And I think that that can be, I mean, it can be counterproductive, right? So, because carbs aren't the problem, the nuance matters. It's really type of carb, timing, like when you're eating them, the amount that you're eating, they all make a difference, especially for muscle protein synthesis and cortisol management. So, a lot of women will cut carbs, and I find that they just keep cutting and cutting and cutting and initially lose some weight, but it's, often a lot of that early loss is water and glycogen, which is the storage form of glucose in your muscles. Um, and if you consider that, like, carbs aren't just bread and pasta and potatoes and rice and sugar, they're plants, fruits, vegetables, lentils, oats, whole grains. Dairy has carbs in the form of lactose or milk sugar, I guess. And those are the ones that we really, you want to focus on incorporating into your diet. And because the availability of those carbohydrates is helps your protein build muscle in the body. And they can help fuel workouts and recovery and help replenish muscle glycogen, which is that storage form of glucose in the muscles. And so when you have a very low carb diet, sometimes you find increased fatigue, increased cravings, poor sleep, increased cortisol levels. Um, I'm talking very low carb. Also, I think just one thing you mentioned, Nicole, is that that you've encountered so many people who do like keto, for example, for a long time, and then they can't sustain it, and so they sort of go. Is that fair to say, like off and on, this sort of roller coaster of keto, non-keto, rather than finding a sustainable way that's, healthiest for their body too, and to reach the goals that they want to.
Exactly. Yeah, I've had multiple clients that I've worked with that when they're talking about again kind of the weight loss factor, oh, I'm going to go on keto because that's always worked for me in the past, and so
Mhm.
I love that because hey, it worked in the moment, but why isn't it working for you now? Because they get off of it, and
Right.
that seems to be the most. They'll go on it for like a 60-day keto, and they'll lose some weight from that, and then they think okay, everything's working. They'll get off of it because they can't sustain it, which is kind of that the point that we're trying to make here, looking for something sustainable, and that way you don't
Hmm.
have to roller coaster all the time, or that yo-yo diet, which is really the issue that somebody is working with, because losing the weight, gaining the weight, losing the weight, gaining the weight, that's really not great for our own metabolism, for our body. um, and kind of spinning off of that, and something that you mentioned too with carbs and our energy.
Hmm.
And I mean, our brain needs carbs to actually, that's the energy source that our brain uses. So especially in midlife, when we start feeling that brain fog and that extreme fatigue, it's something to look at, is what your, even that day, what your diet has been, or maybe it is overall, maybe you've been going low carb for a while and you are noticing that fatigue and brain fog. It's because even our brains are kind of starving for that energy. So whole grain carbs, as you mentioned, kind of the oats, the whole grains, the fruits, the vegetables, we need that stuff.
Hmm. 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 Yeah, and for other, I mean, fruits and vegetables, especially vegetables. I think none of us really, well, I can't say that. I don't really eat enough vegetables. I could stand to have more, I'll admit it. But there's really superstars when it comes to being very nutrient dense without being, calorically dense, and having so many good like plant-based nutrients and fiber and that kind of thing. And, research has actually shown that the more you eat, like the more benefit you derive sort of ad infinitum, like forever. So it's sort of like one of the only things you can eat without, ever overdoing it, in large amounts. So yes, yeah, those things are super important, and having a well-rounded diet. And the other thing I was going to say was, oh, right, I was just thinking when you were talking about the carbs and the brain uses 25% of the glucose that your body, breaks food down into. So it is really an engine, that wants those carbohydrates, and it's the easiest fuel for your brain to use too. So um, protein's super important. I mean, all three of the macronutrients are very important, and it's important to get enough of them, which is, and in midlife, I find so many women are just, whether it's carbs or just overall calories, or um, just, their eating window just tend to start restricting more and more when they're trying to lose weight in ways that used to work and don't really work anymore. Um, which is why I think intermittent fasting is so popular now, or there are so
Mhm.
many questions about it. Um, and I have mixed feelings about intermittent fasting, because I think that it's not a weight loss. I think people have this misconception that it's like a weight loss superpower, but really it's a meal timing strategy that works well for some women, and poorly for others. And when I say intermittent fasting, that means anything from like skipping a day of eating, like eating every other day, to more time restricted eating when you're eating during a specific window of time in the day. So I think that, like, when it comes to a 12 to 14-hour overnight fast where you're, finishing dinner at 6 and eating again at 8 maybe the next morning, that can have some good benefits, like reducing late night snacking, improving digestion for some women, um, improving hunger awareness, and those kinds of things. And so for some women it can be helpful, but what I think becomes tricky is when people don't have a long enough opportunity during the day to get the amount of nutrients that they need. So therefore, then their overall calorie intake and their protein intake suffers. And then, and then you're sort of in this cycle of or continuing on like trying to restrict more and more when actually doing so is having the opposite effect than what you desire. So what matters more than that, I think, is adequate protein. I mean, we'll probably say these things over and
Mhm.
over: sleep, recovery, overall nutrition quality, meeting all of those needs. So I think that fasting is a tool, not a requirement. It can help with, create structure in someone's eating, but it does not magically bypass calories or physiology. So I feel like, and certainly for muscle preservation, we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to get the nutrients in that we need for that. What do you think, Nicole? What's your
Oh.
take on it? I'm just generally curious.
I definitely agree with you on that. And then also from what I've seen out there, again, kind of looking at the research, a large majority of intermittent fasting
Yeah.
research and studies have been done on men, very little on women. So there is not a lot of proof out there that it works. Again, kind of as Byrd had mentioned, kind of those more, I'll say a little bit more extreme. So even starting with the 16-8 kind of eating window, that's very typical. You're going 16 hours without eating, you've got an 8-hour eating window, and then into then going maybe a day or even several days without any food at all, kind of that more fasting. That's a little bit. I think that's too much for women's bodies, especially in midlife.
Mhm.
And from what we have seen, that again, that extreme restriction, even kind of getting to that starvation point if we're going days, can actually increase the cortisol levels in our body, putting more stress on our body. And it's almost like if you think about your metabolism, our metabolism actually wants to be fed in order to work. We got to keep throwing logs on the fire. And if we're taking those logs off, if we're not feeding it, the fire is starting to die down. Our metabolism is almost going to go on hold.
Mhm.
And we might notice that we are actually now retaining a little bit more weight. That, again, might work in the immediate because you're losing water, but then all of a sudden things are going to stop because your
Mhm.
body is in stress and preservation mode.
Mhm.
So.
Mhm. Yeah.
I was going to say anything else to add. I think this might be a good place to kind of pause on what
Mhm.
we brought to the table
Mhm.
and see if anybody has any questions about anything that we've covered.
Mhm.
If there's anything out there that sounds a little bit, maybe a little bit mysterious to you, that's like a myth, kind of catching your attention. Feel free to drop it in the chat, chime in here. We'd love to hear from you too about things that might be confusing to you and see if we can help break that down.
I was thinking something that I picked up on what you guys were saying is it just seems like there's so many underlying factors that go into all of the things, right? So it's like you have to think about when you're eating, what you're eating, how much you're eating, and then how much movement you're having. It's like and then your hormones, and then your age, and then your stress levels, and then
Yeah.
it's just there's so many things. And I think it's something that, I didn't have to think about in my 20s or my 30s,
Yeah.
and it was just like every day you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm just going to kind of eat and I'm just going to kind of go about life. And everything seems like this well-oiled machine. And then one day you wake up and you're like, it's not working the way it used to.
Yes,
Not knowing what
exactly.
to do. Like, you don't, if you're not Nicole or you, and it's not the industry that you've gone into,
Mm.
obviously Nicole knows me and I don't do anything in your guys' realm. So it's like, I have no idea how to take care of the body
Mhm.
that I have other than what I do read on the social media and have the input from the outside world. And it is extremely overwhelming. And you don't know what's right and what works and what doesn't. And you throw all these fads at yourself and see what works and what doesn't. And then you wake up and you're like, this still isn't, I'm so confused,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, yeah, yes, yeah, yeah. It can be overwhelming. And I think what makes it, well, I mean, as you just said, one of the things that makes it so overwhelming is that it's sort of like having to learn new rules. I mean, you're just sort of, because we're not as metabolically flexible as we were anymore. So even if we used to wake up and have something. I mean, I'm just thinking about being my 20, like something I lived from a vending machine for like and but it was okay because I had the metabolism of a 22-year-old. So, when those things start to change and sort of your physiology really starts to change, it does require sort of intention and
Mm-hmm.
learning about it. But I think the goal or the thought is that if you're able to get these few fundamental things down, then the other things, like it's not necessarily required to get into the weeds about the other details, like how much, leucine do I need to get? You don't, if you're meeting your main basic foundational nutritional needs, you're getting enough vegetables, enough protein, enough fiber, um, to fuel, what your body needs right now. Ev- you know, Hopefully that sort of eventually becomes second nature, so that you're
Mhm.
not jumping back on and off this, like, sort of like we were just talking about with keto, going back and forth on diets or trying a new, like, supplement to see if that does something for you. That's You're gonna have the best success, I think, if you have those things down. And and of course sleep. I think I'm with Nicole. I think sleep is like the most foundational thing that you can do, just as a first step, like, get your sleep down. I don't know, that's, what do you think, Nicole? I really think that's critical for other things to sort of go the way you want them to, as much as you're
I
able to. Yeah.
And I was just going to address that too. Sleep is, kind of that foundation. But I guess we can kind of talk about kind of again that kind of nuanced, the mixed message that we're getting with, because of course we all see that hard line. You have to have your 8 hours of sleep, and I
Hmm.
don't think that is absolutely necessary for everybody. That's a great, kind of middle line approach, but kind of depending on your lifestyle and what goes on, even kind of depending. I mean, you might find that you feel really good, again, clear headed, focused, your body has energy. You might find that on 6 hours of sleep. Some people find that. There are some people that don't feel that unless they get 9 hours of sleep.
Hmm.
So again, it's a little bit of everything, or a little bit of kind of just finding what feels right for you. I think that's again kind of addressing that same thing. Let's start with, a balanced plate, sleep that feels right for you, and movement.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Let's break it down there. If you still are not, you're still suffering some extreme symptoms, fatigue, headaches, again, seeing a real increase in weight gain, then maybe start kind of playing around with, okay, I'm going to start measuring my protein. I'm going to start measuring my fiber. I'm going to make sure, kind of I'm doing some more strength training. So again, I even think just getting more movement in
Yeah.
general is a great place to start.
Yeah.
And then kind of weeding through it from there. So
Hmm.
starting at a simple place and then weeding through it from there
Hmm.
is kind of my best advice.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, even if it's that you increase your steps by 250 steps in one day, that's better than not doing it, and it makes a difference. And over time, yeah, so I think I totally agree. I think you start from wherever you are. I guess it can just be overwhelming when you're here. I appreciate what you're saying, Melissa, that, like, how do you know where to start, or, like, or how much you should, increase your exercise, or whatever you're being told, how much you should be exercising, or how much you should be sleeping, for example. Wherever you start from is sort of like just a good gauge. Okay, well, I walk 500 steps a day. Okay, I'm going to take 200 more steps today.
Mhm.
Just more. It's literally moving your body more, because those movements do decline. And guess what? They also decline when we don't get enough calories. Our body, like, that's how, it's one of the ways that our body holds on to, it can be hard for people to lose weight when they're not eating enough, is because one of the main reasons is that your body slows its movement down, so that you're not getting as much, even like this kind of movement, like, you're just not doing that as much. I love this, is my favorite example of non-exercise activity, thermogenesis. But
You're actually
so,
burning calories doing
yeah,
that. Yeah.
exactly right. So when those movements, like, slow down dramatically, then
Yeah.
it's harder to lose weight. So anyway, and so I think if I like to approach things in terms of baby steps, and I think that's what works for most people when it comes to making sustainable changes that are realistic for them.
Mhm.
So, I think if you just sort of assess where you are in those, like, sleep, movement, stress, and nutrition categories, it could be a good starting point. And also working with someone who can help, who can be a guide, if you yeah, as you know, apparently, Melissa, it
Mhm.
seems like you guys work together. I'm not sure, but that's also very helpful to have someone to help guide you through, hold your hand while you're making these changes.
I think I found for me a lot of what it is too. Maybe a lot of people some people don't do this well, but I find for me repetition.
Yeah.
Uh repetition and structure. So it sounds boring, but I eat pretty much the same thing with like little minor changes every single day.
Yes. Yeah.
And that helps me like feel like my best. Is like I know that I know these foods don't aggravate me, so I stick to those same exact foods. And then maybe once a week I'll allow myself to indulge. I'll go out to dinner, have a nice meal, something like that, pay the price for all the oils and all the things that
Yeah.
you're putting in your body, and then restart yourself again. But it's really just finding those things that work for you,
Yeah.
and then making those
100%.
little adjustments, I think. And also going off of social media has
Oh
helped me.
my God, I'm not even
Can be,
gonna.
it can be a good brain break to do that
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
That way you're not hearing all the external noise coming at you and
Yeah.
wanting to try all these trends and fads. And it's like, no, I've already done what I need to do to help myself. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
like that.
agree. I think that's a
Find
fantastic
what works
approach.
for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
mhm.
And adjust in
I,
little ways, you know.
yeah. Yeah. I was just, Bird, you were saying earlier too about, kind of knowing where you're starting from. And that's something I always kind of the first step when I'm working with somebody, when we start working together, is doing some food tracking,
Mm-hmm.
water tracking. We look for those steps and
Mm-hmm.
even just kind of just noticing kind of the sleep that we're getting. So kind of that first maybe week or two that I'm working with somebody, it's all about awareness of what currently is going on.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, again, we're starting from where you're at right here. We know how to take those baby steps forward. So tracking, just bringing some awareness to what your meals look like, what
Mm-hmm.
your daily movement looks like. Could be such a huge place to start.
I
Mhm.
agree. That's where I start with everyone. I find it can be challenging to, to not have that information. So I think that's, yeah, fantastic. Because then you know what's going on. And also it makes the act of tracking your intake, for example, your food intake makes you just people will come back to me like, oh, this was just a really great exercise, in and of itself because it made me so much more aware of things that I didn't even realize I was doing. Um,
Hmm.
so I think
Mhm.
that's a really good point. Yeah.
So yeah, I tracked with the app for like I think maybe I lasted maybe 2 months, and I got
Yeah.
tired of doing it, but it was like showing me exactly where I was either overdoing it or underdoing it. And then
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, well now that I know what everything looks like portion size, now I know what to do and
Right.
what not to do.
Right.
So
Exactly. Yeah, you gave yourself a nice lesson there and something that you
Mhm.
can take with you. So that's
Yeah.
what.
yeah, and I don't think it has to be forever. I think that's what a lot of people think is they have to think,
Right.
oh, I have to do all these things every single day, measure all these things. And it's like, no, you don't. You just have to get the basic foundation ideas and
Hmm. That's
the less
exactly right.
information that you're being thrown at you. I think people do probably better with that, like bite-sized chunks. Like let's address your sleep, let's address your eating, let's address your
Right.
movement, like slow baby
Hmm.
things, just throwing everything at somebody at once too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Exactly. That more information, that's what can kind of make us throw up our hands and be like, I'm not doing it because we're
Right.
so overwhelmed. And it's just, yeah, I'm already exhausted just hearing about it. So
That,
just forget it. Forget
no,
it.
I'm
Yeah.
That's funny, Nicole. I was watching one of your posts, and you were talking about, where you start with people, and it's usually, and that the often, or sometimes they're sort of like disoriented because they're assuming they're going to go in and get like this, like lift heavy on day one, but your approach is much more gentle, and you're trying to correct, malalignments and that kind of thing, right? Is that accurate to say? Sorry, but
Yeah, yeah, that was just one because I'm working with a new client and she's been suffering through some hip pain, even some neck and shoulder pain. So we already from my experience, I know exactly what's kind of going on with her body. So we're starting with those small, kind of small refinements there to correct their muscle imbalances. There's weaknesses in her
Mhm.
posture and her core, so we're correcting those first. They're smaller movements, so it's not an exacting work. It's not exactly intense workout to fix those. So we're working on that first. And she knows she needs it because she even admitted she's like, I know my core is so weak. But and then at the end of our session the other day, she's like, oh, well, what about what about all this other stuff? I'm like, well, we'll
Right,
get there. But in
right,
order for you not to hurt anymore, we need to
right,
fix this first.
right,
So yeah,
right.
well,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
because if you're in pain, you're not going to want to do it either. So it's
Exactly, or you're
Yeah.
going to hurt yourself, or you're going to make it a more serious, injury from what it was. So, kind of again, you're getting all this information that you think you need to have, but again, there's other things that might help you better, just
Mhm.
knowing more, and again, having guidance from somebody
Mhm.
that knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I would
I
not
think
like to have your guys' job because I feel like everyone wants these like instant quick fixes. And it's like, well, no, like you
Yeah.
got to start slow and baby steps. And then when they don't see immediate results, then they're like, well, this isn't working. You're not doing your job. And I quit. And it's like, well, we're not talking like it's a 2 week plan. We're talking like we're changing your
Right.
entire life ultimately. You know,
Mhm.
it takes time, but yeah.
I mean, there are people who will provide that quick fix if people if that's how the route someone wants to go. I have no problem with that, but it's just not the way that
It's not
I.
gonna, it's not sustainable.
You're
Oh,
right.
and again, that kind of leads to that roller coaster again. Or if it's too much too soon, you end up giving up, yeah, because something's hurting or something's uncomfortable, and then you end up not doing anything at all. So a lot of times, those kind of quick fixes are more of that all or nothing approach, and
Right.
it leads you down the wrong path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
Not reality.
yeah. I'm gonna kind of share our last little slide right here, and let me see if I can find it actually. And I think any last points that we might want to make, Byrd?
Um, I would just, I mean, I think this was a good conversation, and I like when it's small because then it can be a conversation. So, I think just to reiterate what we were just talking about is knowing yourself and your needs and how you respond to, sleep, a certain amount of sleep, for example, or different foods, is a great starting point. And also just keeping in mind that these things all influence each other. So you can't sort
Mm.
of fix one in isolation. You can't be like, okay, well, I'm going to do this to get my cortisol down. I mean, there's so many things that contribute to your cortisol levels and that your cortisol levels also influence. So it's sort of like, um, if you think of it as just getting those basics down and learning where you are and making baby steps from there, then those other pieces are more likely to work best together, optimally, I guess. If that makes sense. I hope that made sense.
I love that you're mentioning, sorry to chime in, the cortisol, because it's something that Nicole knows that, I suffer with is high cortisol levels.
Mm,
And I started taking cortisol manager about 2 weeks ago at the direction of my naturopath. And I do feel slightly groggy in the morning, I will admit, even on like the lowest, dose of it. But I will say that like the things that would normally take me up are taking me like here. And so I've noticed that everything else seems to kind of be balancing out without
hmm
those cortisol spikes throughout the day, if that makes sense.
hmm hmm
It seems to be a very important component.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yes, certainly it is for a lot of people. Um, I mean, and I think it just gets demonized, or we're sort of like, no cortisol. I mean, we need it. We need it to survive.
Yeah, we don't
Some
want
of
to pull it out to the
Right.
point that I can't sense any kind of danger around me and I'm walking
Yeah.
la
You're
la land.
you can't run away if a lion approaches you.
You're like, hello.
All
So,
right. Yeah, I think we're just about up on our meeting time here. So I think that's a
a
good, I think
lovely conversation. Thank you.
yeah, a lot of important stuff. And we're even going to kind of continue on next month, our tackling of myths. So if there's anything that you think about over the next month that you'd love to hear kind of break down and tackled, we're happy to address that for you. We'll bring it to the table next month. And we'll send a replay out to everybody that registered, and know that we're always here for you to answer any questions.
Hmm. Definitely.
Thank you
All
guys.
right.
Thank
Well,
These
you
are
you.
both have a great day. Thanks for
You
coming.
too. I'll see
All
you.
right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.